What is up, guys? It's your boy obbldude, and today we are playing Counter-Strike Condition Zero. It has been about 19 years since I played this, and we're gonna see what it's about. Dude, I don't even remember any of this. This is kind of different though than like Counter-Strike 2 or even CS:GO. This is like totally different looking. This is kind of weird. Oh, I get it. I think this might be like single player or something, or some kind of co-op maybe. Hold on, let me back out. There we go. It's kind of hard to remember everything because it's been so long. Everything looks like weird and different. Let's see if we can find a server. Alright, this is looking kind of familiar now. We'll go CT, and I don't remember this, but we'll go SEAL Team 6. That's a little different than like Counter-Strike 2 or even CS:GO. So for a lot of this video, I'm going to be making a lot of comparisons to pretty much current CS:GO and versus this, just because, I mean, back in the day, this was awesome, but after playing this a little bit, it feels a lot different, and not necessarily in a bad way. It's just a lot more simplified, I guess, and the mechanics are a little more simplified, obviously. It still feels like CS:GO, and it still feels very nostalgic and familiar. One main thing that I've noticed so far is the movement mainly. Feels a little clunky, a little more, you know, old school, which isn't a bad thing. It's just different than the feel of current Counter-Strike, which isn't too bad. It's just, you know, you kind of have your basic like sideways, forwards, and backwards movement. And then, I mean, I almost want to say like there's not even really strafing too much in this. Like there is kind of, like you can kind of maneuver it, but it just feels different. It's hard to kind of put into words. You really got to kind of experience it for yourself. And that's one thing that I totally forgot about that I just remembered when I started playing this, is that over and over and over again, every game, all you hear is fire in the hole. Which even back in the day, it was like constant, and just hearing that over and over really brings back like the memories and the rage, because I'm not gonna lie, even though modern CS is pretty rage inducing, back in the day this was even more rage inducing, even Dust 2. And I'm really glad that I jumped into something really nostalgic like Dust 2, since it still exists, but this is like the OG Dust 2 in my opinion, or at least this is the first Dust 2 that I've ever seen, because I started playing on Condition Zero. I didn't start with regular Counter-Strike. I started with Condition Zero, then went to Source, and then CS:GO came after it. Now we have CS2. So it just really shows like the main evolution of this game and everything. And I don't know why, but for some reason this game feels a lot more difficult to play than like your modern CS. And I think that's kind of interesting to note, because the old school CS community, like the CS 1.6 community, I believe, is pretty strong still. I mean, I was very surprised of how big of a community these older Counter-Strike games have still. And that's really cool, because like in a lot of ways I feel like the new modern CS is a little bit more easier and a more noob friendly, I guess. But I mean, if you jump into this, I mean, you're going to be struggling, because number one, it feels just completely different, but two, you have like so many people that are just god tier that have just been playing this game like forever and are just that good, and it takes a lot more skill. And I think that's why this game has a lot more positive reviews, or more positivity towards it, just because it does have that skill gap to it still, unlike a lot of modern games that try to really cater to the noob and the new player more so, which then makes the game not as fun once you get like really good at it potentially. You know, I feel like a lot of people are either jumping into the new CS because they kind of started with the newer ones, or they're kind of just playing it still because of the nostalgia from playing for so long. But I was very impressed how strong these older Counter-Strike communities are, and in a lot of ways I feel like this game is actually a lot more fun than the more modern Counter-Strikes, even though it is harder, even though with that skill gap. I feel like that's kind of what brings the fun out of it and the joy out of it and everything. I mean, I was getting wrecked this game. And even though, despite all that and getting wrecked and not really being able to do too much, I was still having fun and enjoying it just because I haven't seen this in a while. I mean, even just the old school, like, death like animations are pretty insane. And I think in a lot of ways, like, this game is almost timeless. And there is some differences that I'm still noticing from like Counter-Strike Condition Zero back in the day and like now. Like one major thing that I've noticed is that there's really like nobody that talks on a mic. Now I will say back in the day there was still a lot of people that didn't use mics. Like there was a lot of that in-game like radio comms, kind of like what we're seeing here with the go 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 and the fire in the hole. A lot of people used that back in the day, but I feel like back in the day there was a lot more people using mics and talking to each other on mics. I remember like playing this game with my buddies back in the day, like it'd be after school and I'd just be running around like shooting people, trying to get kills, mostly dying a lot cuz like I was pretty new to the game and I didn't play a whole lot of Condition 0. I played a lot more Source. But I remember my buddies just getting super salty at like almost every little thing. Like they'd be like just screaming in the mic like and just hearing it in my headset and like just going deaf and I'm just like, okay, what is going on here? Like I don't understand this. Like and then like it's just hilarious cuz like every time like my teammates died you would hear like the frustration in everyone's voices all the time. Not so much like it is nowadays. Now it's a little more calm and a little more strategized, but before it was like pretty much like old school Call of Duty where everyone was just like talking trash and stuff. But now, like when you jump into like Counter-Strike Condition Zero, at least, like I swear, there's no one talking on a mic. Like I played 3 or 4 games trying to get some footage for this video, and I kind of just settled on this game. But in every game, like there was no one on my team talking, and a couple times I tried to talk on the mic and just got like no responses. So that's one major difference, because I feel like back in the day, at least, like when this game was still like new and even during the days of like Counter-Strike Source jumping into like Condition Zero you would still have a lot more like team interaction and stuff, but now it's not so much like that. But I don't think many people take Condition Zero as seriously as they used to, or even like as seriously as like Counter-Strike nowadays. Because nowadays you have like, you know, the whole esports scene and like a lot higher stakes, which I still think is kind of interesting because I don't think esports has really changed that aspect too much, just because back in the day, even before esports were like a thing, people still took these games like super seriously, and even like old school Call of Duty, you know, the original Modern Warfare, things like that. So even before like the whole esports scene, I mean, you still had like the super like toxic and like um, taking the game super serious environment even before esports. So I don't think esports really played a huge role in it, but I think nowadays it plays a little bit more. But back then it was just mainly just, you know, us kids, 13, 14 year olds just like screaming at each other, getting mad because we're just getting wrecked. And it makes sense too, because I think a big part of that back in the day at least was the fact that, you know, you didn't have respawns until the next round, and a lot of games didn't really act that way. A lot of games, you know, you had kind of like the instant respawn or like a quicker respawn, but you know, a lot of times if you're like the first death on a round, I mean, you're sitting out the whole round and you got to wait for the next round, and it really makes sense why that would be super like rage inducing. Now I want to start kind of talking about like the weapons and the fighting in this game compared to like newer Counter-Strike, because one major thing I've noticed in this game is that the recoil is insane, and I kind of like that, because in this game like the biggest skill element of this game is like recoil control, aim control, things like that. Now I feel like aiming or looking down sights or like trying to snap to people, and even like some of these games having this automatic snapping feature and stuff like that, like it makes things a lot easier nowadays to like shoot at people, get a quick kill, even if you haven't really played the game much, just because of all these different like mechanics and features that these newer games have. But in games like Counter-Strike Condition Zero, I mean, you really got to focus on recoil control, aiming well, things like that. Like you just noticed right there, like, I mean, I was trying to move like to the right a little bit more, and like I'm so used to like these newer sensitivities of games that like I didn't move the mouse nearly enough, and I just started shooting because like my muscle memory is more used to like small minor movements and then shooting, and in this game it's like nothing like that. You need like wider movements, wider strides, things like that. So that's like one major difference I've also noticed with playing, because in these newer games, I mean, you barely move the mouse and your guy's like almost doing a 360. But I mean, in this, you need a lot more movement with the mouse and a lot more control with the mouse. And I mean, it makes sense because I mean, back then, I mean, sensitivity was a thing, but it wasn't like the way it is now, or at least it didn't feel the way that it does now. But in a lot of ways, I mean, this game, Counter-Strike Condition Zero, feels and seems a lot more like a completely different game, though. Just because there's a whole bunch of different skill sets and skill gaps, and I feel like with the more modern game, especially, obviously Counter-Strike 2, because that's the only Counter-Strike really, as far as the modern game goes. But I mean, even like with the enhanced smoke features and stuff, I mean, it makes it better, don't get me wrong, but this feels a lot more arcadey, a lot more better in my opinion in a lot of ways, because it doesn't have that super realistic feel, but at the same time it's not that realistic either. But with this, it feels a lot more arcadey. I feel like if I play this enough and give this enough time, I feel like I could definitely get better at this game quicker than I could modern CS. And the only main reason for that is just because I feel like with a lot of new features and mechanics that come out, it can really kind of hither gameplay experience in a way, mainly as far as the main objective, which is shooting, getting kills, and then either planting and defusing the bomb. Now, one thing I do definitely want to mention is the graphics and the way this game looks, because I'm not going to lie, for a game that came out in 2004, it looks pretty good. Now, I'm sure there's been some updates, some remasterings, things like that over the years. But I mean, even still, I mean, for an older game that came out in '04, I mean, it's looking pretty good. I mean, to be honest, the game hasn't changed a whole lot since 2004 anyway, as far as like the way it looks and like the maps and things like that. I forget what this map is called, but I'm pretty sure this map looks a lot different on current CS, so that's one main difference I do want to mention, because I do recognize this map, but it does look completely different, and I forget what it's called, but I do think that this map is definitely on modern CS, and I think it does look a lot different now than it did in Condition Zero, so that's definitely one main thing to note. I will say I think I do like the current version of this map, if I'm thinking of the right map correctly. I think the current version of this map might be a little bit better. And there might be some more changes that I'm not fully aware of. I'm kind of just basing all this based on what I know about Counter-Strike Condition Zero when I played it back in the day, from playing it now, and then from playing modern CS over the past few years or so, just very casually. Now, like I mentioned earlier, back in the day, I didn't play a whole bunch of Condition Zero, because I'm pretty sure once I started playing Condition Zero, I think Source came out not too long after that, and then I started playing Source. I got introduced to this game mainly by one of my buddies. He was like, hey, I've been playing this awesome game, you gotta try it, and he told me to download Condition Zero, and this was before Source was even out. So I don't know how long I was playing Condition Zero with him, but it wasn't long at all. And then he was like, yo, download Source, because now Source is out. And then I downloaded Source, and I played a lot more Source. I almost wonder if I should do a sequel to this video and take a look at Counter-Strike Source again, because it's been a while since I played Source, and I think I played Source for at least a year, if not a little longer. I think like Condition Zero and Source together is like the majority of my Counter-Strike experience, versus like Counter-Strike Global Offensive and the new CS2. So between these two games, I've played those a lot more than even the modern games. So I thought it'd be interesting to kind of take a look at it. But I mean, me and my buddy played it a lot. We got our other friends to jump in and play it. Some of our buddies didn't really like it that much, but you know, it was definitely for me because I mean, at that time I think I was playing some Call of Duty. I forget exactly which one, but I mean, I think that's right around the time of original Modern Warfare as well. So it might have even been original Modern Warfare. But I think when I started playing original Modern Warfare, I think that came after Counter-Strike, because I don't think I went back to the PC for a while once I started playing the original Modern Warfare and stuff like that. But I think that'd be interesting to jump back into Source too. But even back in the day, you know, I think I only played Condition Zero for maybe 3 or 4 months, and then I think we started playing Source a lot more. And then I want to say like not long after Source came out, me and my buddies actually stopped playing Counter-Strike altogether, and we started playing World of Warcraft. And then not long after that was the original Modern Warfare Call of Duty, which I think came out in '06. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe it was '07. Maybe it was even later. Honestly, I don't even remember. I did no research before doing this. I just kind of wanted to jump into a game, start playing the game, and kind of just see what I remember, see what kind of nostalgic feels I could get. But thinking about it now, I think it'd be a lot more nostalgic to take a look at Counter-Strike Source as well, which I think I might do that in the next few weeks or so. Now, if I remember correctly, me and my buddies used to play a lot of like hostage games in Condition Zero and Source. Or maybe it was just Source. I'm having a little trouble remembering, but I'm pretty sure, at least back in the day, I don't know if this game mode still exists in current modern CS, but I know back in the day you had the bomb defusal games and you had the hostage maps where you could either plant and defuse the bomb, or you had to protect and rescue the hostages. And you basically had the enemy team watching the hostages, and then you had to like take the hostages. Again, I might be thinking of a different game here, but I'm pretty positive I remember playing a bunch of office hostage games, and I'm pretty sure that was a thing. I don't know if hostage games are still a thing now in current Counter-Strike, but I know back in the day, my mind is like imprinted with the vision of me and my buddies jumping into an office game and playing like hostage office games. I don't know how else to explain it, but I just like kind of remembered that off the top of my head, and I was like, oh yeah, I think you had the choice between playing against doing the defusal maps and doing the hostage maps. Now again, I don't know if that's even still a thing in modern Counter-Strike. If it is, I don't think anyone plays it, because I've seen so many videos, so many Counter-Strike streams, so much stuff, and I don't think I've ever seen like anyone play a hostage game in like forever. Now again, I might be thinking of a different game for some reason, but I'm pretty sure either in Source or Condition Zero, I remember playing a bunch of office hostage games, because for some reason those games in office were like really fun. But again, I might be remembering wrong. This is all kind of me trying to remember things like from like 20 some odd years ago, 19, 20 years ago. But one thing I do remember, because I remember me and my buddies talking a lot about it, and one reason why we ended up going to Source once it came out was I remember me and my buddies talking a lot about certain like balancing issues, and I think that was one main reason for the rage-inducing aspects of at least Condition Zero, was just some balancing issues, mainly with the guns, the gunplay, different things like that. Just like, I'm trying to remember. I know the guns were like the main balancing issue, I believe. And with all those balancing issues, I think a lot of those did get solved in Source, and I think that's why once Source came out, me and my buddies were like, yeah, let's just stick with Source for a little bit. Even though Condition Zero was the first Counter-Strike game I ever played, and I did go back to it a few times after Source came out just to play it myself. But I do remember after a while, I was like, okay, Source is kind of a lot better, and I'm gonna kind of just stick with Source. But it was definitely fun to go back to every once in a while, even back then. And I kind of was thinking about that too, and I'm like, I gotta go back to Condition Zero and just see what it's like. Because honestly, I expected to log in here and either have no servers to join or empty servers to join. And so far in all the games that I've tried to join so far, I'm pretty sure I've joined with like full teams. So I mean, it seems like people are still playing this a lot, even 20 years later. It's pretty insane, honestly. I did not expect that. But at the end of the day, I really owe Counter-Strike Condition Zero a lot because, this is the first FPS game that I first started playing that really got me into FPS games in the first place. And it also started a long kind of line of me playing just Counter Strike in general, from Condition Zero, and then I went to Source, uh, CSGO, which I played the most of out of any Counter Strike that there is, and then a little bit of CS2, but not too much. Kind of haven't been playing CS for a while, but my whole start of playing FPS games and enjoying FPS games and, you know, playing almost all the Counter Strikes that come after that, that whole thing kind of pretty much started with this game right here. So, I mean, when it comes to gaming and like my whole gaming journey and the things that made me want to play other games, like it all started pretty much here, especially when it comes to PC gaming. I mean, the first PC game I think I ever played was this game, Counter-Strike Condition Zero. I'm pretty sure this was the very first PC game that kind of introduced me into PC gaming. And then because of that, I started playing, Source, and then World of Warcraft, and then a bunch of other stuff. And then I kind of went to the consoles for a little bit, because games kind of started to accelerate from there, and my PC couldn't really handle those games anymore. So then I did a lot of console, but I mean, this game really got my interest in PC gaming from the start, really. So I just have to say I owe this game definitely a lot for that, because if it wasn't for this game, I might have just stuck with the console. And my whole experience of playing FPS games in general might not have been as in depth as it was as well if it wasn't for this game as well. And with all that being said, that's pretty much where I think I want to kind of end things. I mean, I wanted to try out this game again. It's been a super long time. I wanted to see kind of what it was like and kind of revisit it, get the nostalgic feels again, and everything like that. And I really wanted to make this video, and I thought it'd be interesting. But anyway, I'm glad you guys showed up, checked out the video, things like that. Let me know what you guys think about either Condition Zero, Source, or any other old school games really like this. I really wanted to just give this another shot and just see, and I might make this into kind of like a little mini series too. But anyway, guys, let me know what you think about the video in the comments below. And we might do something similar to this again in the future. But anyway, if you like the video, hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you subscribe and turn notifications on so that you can be notified every time I drop a new video. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.